Very much indeed for your time. Thanks also to Robert Fox. The time now on 5 Live is 19 minutes past 9. Now, a council in Hampshire says it's going to get rid of its CCTV cameras because they're expensive, out of date, and no longer effective. Havant Borough Council Scrutiny Board has recommended decommissioning the town's 46 cameras to save more than £130,000. Councillor Jackie Branson spoke to 5 Live this week.
Technology in cameras have moved on so much with smart cameras, wireless, and the majority of our cameras are not in the correct places. They were placed in places where there might have been a problem 10 years ago, but now they're not.
Interesting stuff, isn't it? The UK has one of the largest numbers of CCTV cameras in the world. The British Security Industry Association estimates there are between 4 and almost 6 million cameras, with around 1 in 70 of them being publicly owned. But running CCTV isn't something councils in England and Wales have to do, so some are considering cutting the service to save money. I'd welcome your thoughts on this tonight. I know a few years ago when CCTV was first being proposed, there were very many suggestions that it was like living in a big brother state, that we'd be followed everywhere we went. Maybe, though, as time has gone by, maybe we've become more used to them being around. Maybe they've helped to solve a crime, for example, of which you were a victim. I'd love to hear your comments tonight. 0500 909 693. Give us a call. Do we need CCTV, or is it an intrusion in our privacy? Drop me a text at 85058. Let's get a couple of contrasting views from Dr. Sean Gabb, who is from the Libertarian Alliance. Evening to you, Sean.
Evening, Adrian.
Professor Mark Nixon from the University of Southampton, a researcher in biometrics who's helped prepare evidence in a murder case using security camera footage. Mark, tell us a little bit about that case, if you would.
Yeah, hi.
Hiya.
The case was in Australia, and they had surveillance in the shop, and it's just an elderly couple running a shop, and this guy came in and he cased the joint in the morning. And then he came back later in the day and he murdered the shopkeeper and stabbed his wife. And the Australian police asked us to compare the footage of the guy who cased the joint and the guy who came in and committed the murder. And we produced evidence that said we believe that the identity of those people is the same, based on the way the person was walking. And that guy, when he was faced with the evidence, he put his hands up and said, yeah, I committed the crime, and he's now serving time. And
was the CCTV evidence the crucial piece of evidence that helped secure his conviction?
Oh, I don't know. He put his hands up, so he never actually came to trial.
All right. So there was CCTV evidence against him. Maybe that made him put his hands up, as it were. We just don't know for certain. Sean Gabb, what do you make of the news that Havant is going to lose its council-run cameras?
Well, I must say that I agree with Havant Council. I don't agree with Havant because I may believe that this will take us straight into a Big Brother state if we don't get rid of all the CCTV cameras. We've now had 20 years of these, and although we live in a more authoritarian state than used to be the case, it has not taken us into a Big Brother state. I think the problem with CCTV cameras is what the council said. They are seldom in the right place. Villains have learned how to put hoods on and not to look at the cameras. The cameras often don't get very useful footage of people committing crimes. There is a shortage of public money. There are priorities. And keeping with a technology which seemed a good idea 20 years ago is not such a good idea now. Indeed, what I might add is that the number of television cameras has exploded. We're not talking about 4 to 7 million, we're talking 40, 50, 60 million, because almost everybody nowadays is carrying around a television recording studio in his pocket. And quite often the authorities appeal not for the councils to give up their CCTV footage. They appeal for members of the public to come forward.
Interesting, Sean, though. I mean, you say that criminals will know where the cameras are and they'll cover their faces and they'll use HUDs and so on. That may be true in the case of a premeditated crime, but not all crime is premeditated. And I don't know if there's an outbreak of football hooliganism, for example. CCTV footage can be very useful, can't it, in identifying people who may not have gone out that morning intending to commit a crime, but may have ended up committing a crime later on in the day.
Well, you're making a distinction with which I don't entirely agree. On the one side, you look at totally premeditated crimes where somebody tools up and goes out and does it. And on the other side, people who are out of their minds and don't really understand what they're doing. I think you'll find that most villains are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I never suggested that, but people do get sometimes caught up in situations where they end up committing public order offences.
Oh, yes. Of course, there are always people who will be caught by this stuff. It's a question of how often, and is it worth the money, and are there more effective ways of apprehending malefactors than using this old-fashioned technology which most serious criminals now take fully into account?
Mark, has Sean got a point here that because so many of us now have mobile phones with very good quality recording devices on them, is CCTV now old-fashioned technology?
Well, some of the analog systems, yeah, I mean, it's very old and there's more modern stuff, and we haven't actually invested in, say, the computer vision techniques at the universities. We're researching in systems that can detect people leaving bags behind, cue the Brussels bombing. We're researching things that can identify you by the way you walk and by other things from video surveillance, so it doesn't matter whether you wear a hat and stuff like that. So there's a lot of very new stuff that's in the pipeline, and just to criticise the old stuff, on the basis of it's old and it's in the wrong place, well, move it and do the new stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying that there is a future for CCTV, albeit more sophisticated CCTV that perhaps operates in a slightly different way than simply a grainy black and white image from a camera on top of a pole somewhere.
I mean, society has a need to be able to identify people from surveillance footage. There's hundreds of cases on the web of the police releasing photographs of, can you identify this person who committed X crime, yeah? And sometimes they're disguised, yeah? And so we clearly need ways to identify people from this material, and that's where we should be concentrating.
Tell me a little bit about the technology, then, that is developing.
Oh, the new stuff. Well, I mean, we've been developing gait recognition for a long time.
Gait recognition, did you say?
We recognise you by the way you walk.
By your gait, yes.
Yeah. Not a farmyard gait. No, this is a real thing. And is it new? Well, Shakespeare has 7 quotes in Shakespeare about how you can recognise people by the way they walk. I don't think he had a surveillance camera. I think he's thinking about the sound. You can recognise people from the sound. So that's been going for the last 20 years, and there's a whole load of research around the world showing the same thing. People have even developed forensic systems for use by the police and stuff to use it there. And there's laboratories elsewhere on identifying people by the way they walk. And the new stuff is actually, we call it soft biometrics. It's simply based on human descriptions of people, and we use those with computers. And we use artificial intelligence, machine learning, to learn the relationship between computer vision and human vision, what people see and what they describe. And when we make those links, we can then pull people out of video and identify them.
And you say that if somebody takes a bag into, let's say, a crowded room, into maybe an airport lobby or whatever, and then leaves that bag, walks away from it, that particular act of leaving could be identified by a camera and flagged up then to a security guard.
There's loads of automatic techniques for finding people depositing luggage behind. We can also re-identify people, as they go across town. We can identify them appearing in front of different cameras, yeah. So we work on re-identification.
What about that, Sean? Then there's a greater level of scrutiny of our movement, a greater intrusion, if you like. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
There is the possibility of a greater intrusion. It will be very expensive to set up. We're talking of considerable sums of money here, which would be better put into orthodox policing. And here you've pushed me to the wall where I'll reveal my libertarian credentials. I would never for a moment deny that there are many cases where CCTV footage has helped to identify criminals. However, when you multiply the number of cameras, when you multiply the number of efficient cameras, you enable the authorities to go somewhat beyond their public remit of catching criminals. I'm not talking about a Big Brother state with the 3 o'clock knock on the door. What I'm talking about is the possibility, or the strong probability, that low-grade jobsworths looking at this CCTV footage will start to dish out fines to people for absolutely trivial offences which a police officer on the beat would overlook or deal with a few words of warning. There was a case a few years ago where somebody was done because he was caught on CCTV putting household waste into a public rubbish bin. Now, perhaps a police officer would have said, here, you can't do that. No, take it home and deal with it there. Instead, some jobsworth looking at the footage said, oh, an offence has been committed, and the brown envelope came through the post. Now, that is what we're looking at. Another thing we're looking at is a state which has been called anarcho-tyranny. On the one hand, ordinary members of the public who are committing absolutely trivial offences, I hasten to repeat, will be done to the full extent of law. Yet drunks who are urinating in bus shelters, they get overlooked. And so the potential of these cameras may be to take us into a Big Brother state. There is still that possibility, but much more likely it will take us into a state of affairs in which even more members of the public than is the case at present will regard the law with contempt and hostility because they perceive it to be against them.
Sean, thanks for your time this evening. Dr. Sean Gabb, thanks also to Mark Nick.